Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of We Them Niggas, a project I've been nurturing for just over 2 years now in the hopes of bringing people with unique perspectives and talents into the spotlight for us to learn from. I'm really hoping everybody's going to learn something today on this episode. And if you do, I'd love it if you would rate the podcast and share it with a friend. Jumping into today's episode, I have with me a young man who goes by the name of Catalyst, who is the founder of an organization called 40 Acres DAO. 40 Acres DAO is an internet native community dedicated to educating, engaging, and empowering marginalized communities using blockchain technology. This young man is doing incredible work, and I'm so excited to have you with me, Catalyst, sharing your story and perspective on Web3 and its relevance to the interests of Black, Brown, and otherwise marginalized people. I know we got connected at ETH back in March, if I'm not mistaken, and I'm really excited to finally have you on the show and be able to not only myself, show up and understand what you guys are up to and have done more research on what it looks like. And I'm also excited to see that our relationship has evolved, that you've been able to show up to my community calls, get to know my community, what I'm up to as well. I'm really excited that we are seeing each other as value aligned, and I'm excited to be building with you. I'm really just honored to have you on the show today. So welcome. How are you?
Wow, thank you so much, Maseo. I'm doing great today. And part of the reason for that is for the opportunity to continue to connect with mission and value aligned individuals such as yourself and talk about how we could push this blockchain stuff forward.
Absolutely. Well, I'm excited that's the boat you're on. I think that gives you all as an audience a taste of who this guy is. This guy's out for community, and it's a pleasure to have you here. And so I guess just to jump right in, how would you describe 40 Acres DAO to my audience? How do you want it? How would you describe it?
Can we, I was about to ask if we could cuss. Forgot. It's We Them Niggas podcast.
Yeah, say whatever you want.
40 Acres. Shout out to Ja Florent out of Miami for giving us this game. But we would best consider ourselves a real nigga aggregator. So kind of
Stop
sparks
playing with it.
the connection between We Them Niggas and the real nigga aggregator of Web3. Um, but to kind of dig deeper into what that truly means is we're an oasis in a desert. And I think we all know what the desert is right now. The land of the rug pulls, the land of the endless PFP projects that provide no utility, the land of protocols and platforms that don't patronize artists. We are a safe haven, uh, curated, meticulously crafted for our people to be able to connect with one another, build with one another, and develop a resilient sense of community that's able to coordinate for a unified mission. So I'm gonna stop right there, but I'm happy to dig deeper if you would need me to.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's beautiful, and it's poetic. I feel like you're waxing poetic, and I'm interested in
Yeah.
how would you characterize that mission? Like, what is the deeper mission, and like, why is it so near and dear to you?
So the deeper mission of 40 Acres has always been to promote education and a sense of self-determination for marginalized and historically excluded communities. The very reason why we named ourselves 40 Acres was because General Order Number 3 had initially promised us 40 acres and a mule from the federal government as a reparations for the 300, now 400 plus years of uh, just outright horrors that we've had to endure and still endure. 200 years roughly after that order, we've yet to receive a penny. I actually believe that the stimulus checks that arrived during the pandemic was the first time outside of tax returns that some members of our community had been just handed money that rightfully it belonged to them. So we're still waiting on that 40 acres to bear its fruit. But part of the reason why we decided to name this collective, this DAO, this ecosystem 40 acres is because we don't want to wait any longer. Matter of fact, we can't. And now we're faced with being firmly at the frontier of technology as it makes the decision of if it's gonna send us over the edge or help us regenerate our future. And we chose as a collective to take our destiny in our own hands and to build with mission and value aligned individuals such as yourself, such as the members of our Uhuru Force Guild, such as the artists in our Renaissance on Chain Guild, or the ethnographers in our Scribe Gang. We all understood the urgency of the moment, and we wanted to embody that by promoting education, being engaged in our community, and empowering our neighbors, as we know that the only way forward is together. So that's what the ethos behind 40 Acres is. And that's just a sliver of how we try to embody that each and every day.
Mm. And yeah, I think that's beautiful. I'm definitely, uh, I definitely love the mission of trying to empower people, and I think especially enabling an attitude of self-determination. I think for me with this project, a big thing that I'm really interested in is like both exploring for myself, what does it mean to be a black man in America and the world in the 21st century, but also more expansively, like what is it like to be anybody in the 21st century right now, and just as much as I don't know like who I am and necessarily where I'm from, I know less and sometimes more about other people and their ethnic backgrounds and politics and stuff like that, but I'm really interested in getting a clear understanding, and whether that means through reading, through connecting with people, through having conversations like this. um, that's something I'm really passionate about, and so I'm really honored and excited to have you here and to unpack, how this work pertains to being black and being marginalized in the 21st century. And something I'm really excited to do with this platform and this project is help people understand specifically how blockchain technology pertains to the public interest and the interests of marginalized people in particular. So I think a lot of people think of cryptocurrency and think of like Bitcoin and money and finance. They don't necessarily think of making a difference in a meaningful way for people who have historically been neglected and undermined and under resourced
Right.
and exploited. But that's the opportunity that I see in crypto, um, and I'm always excited to have a conversation that can help my audience understand why I see it that way, and how other people see it. Because I think it's not just about how I see it, but it's about how we see it, and what we can
Exactly.
accomplish. And I want people to be a part of that conversation. So I really appreciate you being here, and I'm curious to hear like uh, how why does this project, like for you, how does it make sense for this to be a DAO, and what does it mean for it to be a DAO?
So, whenever it came to the determination of whether or not to DAO, it really brought us back to our history. As Marcus Garvey said, a people with no knowledge of their history is like a tree without roots. And we made an intentional effort to be deeply rooted in this endeavor because we know that in order to be able to connect across the diaspora, we were going to have to step outside of our personal lived experience and lean on something greater than our individual selves. What that looks like is the culture that so many try, and I know we'll get into this later, to commodify, but is really an intangible asset that if you have it and you can wield it successfully, could be a positive force for change. So that's where determining on how our governance systems and how our operations would be at the forefront of technology, but also deeply rooted in cultural practices that have been around for ages. Before there were investment clubs, there were susus. Before there were corporations seeking out profits and profits only, there were tribes that came together because they wanted to preserve themselves first, but also build a community that was resilient. So how can we look at these historical practices and the modern era of technology and say, how can we collide these two in a way in which we could prioritize the efficiencies of what's coming on what's on the horizon, but also leverage the knowledge of what has not steered us wrong uh, ever, and we've been around for centuries. So that's where the choice to become a DAO really came top of mind because, mind you, uh, I've been in the crypto ecosystem for a while, but it was, I believe they call it DAO summer. So you had DeFi summer, then you had DAO summer, and it was just a lot of tooling that put it in a palatable sense for our people to really say, okay, yeah, it's crypto. I'm gonna tune it out because it's difficult to understand. To now, shout out to my brother Ikechi, building Tribal, which is effectively an investment club that's DAOified to where you could manage your treasury, and it's not just relegated to financial assets. You could create a scholarship fund like what we've done. You could create a real estate community development fund like what we've done, all using DAO infrastructure and really bringing the participants along for the philosophy behind the DAO, because the technology is already figured out. It's the mindsets that we have to further like educate and push people towards decentralizing their lifestyle and being willing to opt into a more fluid and decentralized form of governance. Um, People oftentimes are scared of being empowered. People oftentimes, if they're not scared, they're probably naive to the power that they have.
Mm.
So helping usher people through and explaining to them, hey, you are a co-owner. You know, you have a vested interest in the success of this endeavor. So it would behoove you to be a self-starter and look for opportunities and capitalize off of them in a sustainable fashion. What does that look like when you wrap blockchain into it? For example, that scholarship fund that we have, those people that we support with our community development fund, the way in which we figure out who needs and deserves those funds comes from those that are adjacent to the issues, that have gone through it, witnessed and experienced them before. So by and this is how I say, in order to leverage that technology but also the culture and the lived experience simultaneously, our proposals look a little different than the Ethereum improvement protocol proposals. Like, these are far more qualitative in nature, but we get to, through the A in DAO standing for autonomous, get to leverage this technology that streamlines processes that, due to human input and how culture has been designed and manufactured to operate, would oftentimes, red tape it up. But as somebody who has a history in politics and now in finance, being able to tear back that red tape through technology and through collective communal input, and I like how you talked about the importance of things like learning yourself as well as learning about the lived experiences of other people, because that also contributes to the efficiencies that we're also able to identify. But it's a work, in a certain type of work, that has to go into making that possible, which is why we're trying to decentralize everything. It's not just the LLCs, but it's the way that you think about certain things. It's about the institutions that we opt into that have perpetuated harm, and that now we're circling back in the blockchain ecosystem to try and uh, put makeup on a pig and recreate those institutions in the Web3 space. So I think that it's very arduous work, but it's very rewarding, and it's something that the community was eager to participate in, because it was a nascent idea, and the technology was meeting the capabilities and capacity that we needed.
Yeah, I think that makes a whole lot of sense, and something that really that for me was a big click when I first got into crypto through my friend Drew in my senior year of college, was like the idea of DAO specifically, being a tool for collective action, and really being a paradigm shift for how we coordinate as people in general. And I think so many challenges in the world are a function of coordination failures. Whether that's like challenges around policy and the way like hegemonies emerge and maintain power and continue to undermine the public interests, or like whether that's in other spaces and institutions that also don't really center people and the people that are stakeholders in those spaces. And something that really excites me is that you guys, with 40 acres, what you've done is you've convened a space for people to begin to think about like what are the challenges, concerns, and interests of the communities that you want to stand for and empower. I think that's a really powerful thing, because I think for me, at the heart of blockchain, at the heart of crypto, there's opportunities for collective action. I think that's like the most important thing. And I think that's honestly presumably what scares large governments like the U.S. government most about crypto, I think. is the potential for people to not only organize with their finances on an infrastructure they have no control over, but also for people to um, publish and preserve ideas that can't be censored in spaces that are public and public domain. Really forward thinking of you all to be using this technology in this space. I think it's really amazing that you guys are opening up that space for this conversation to be happening. Being that it's still so early in the journey and the development of the cryptocurrency space, I think it's really exciting to be able to see like where's crypto going to go, but also I think it's really empowering when you realize, like, wait a second, like I can have a role in where crypto is going, and where technology is going, and where society is going, and that the Web3 world and community is really an opportunity to take a stab at doing exactly that in all three of those domains. And so I think it's super powerful. That's what you guys are out to do, and I definitely acknowledge you for doing that. I'm curious to hear a bit more about like how you got into Web3. I know you mentioned you have a background in politics as well as in finance. I'd love for you to tell us a little bit more about your background, Catalyst, and how we came to know you as Catalyst in the world of Web3, and what kinds of experiences have facilitated you to think about it and see the kind of opportunities that you do.
Most definitely. So yeah, my experience actually starts at a very early age. I've always been inclined and affectionate when it came to technology. So at the age of, 4 and 5, I was playing video games, but then by 6 and 7, I was beginning to learn how to code. And that kind of carried me to a special high school that had career programs in which I participated in the information technology track, doing everything from building servers to designing video games. But I was kind of taken off of that trajectory to focus more so on like leadership and leadership development. And that's whenever I began my work as a community organizer, which then transitioned into a uh, me studying at college for politics. So me studying in college for politics was very short lived, because for one, politics it should not be a career. I feel like politics is just a necessity that is required of everybody. Everybody is a politician. It doesn't matter what office you hold. The first office that you hold is the household. That is what comprises all of these political systems that we opt into in the first place. So I really just disassociated from the political world after seeing just a lot of turmoil geopolitically, as well as nothing has substantially changed. Um, I was attending Morehouse College in Atlanta, and the infrastructure is kind of what stood out the most to me. The fact that here's one of the most prestigious black institutions, period, education or otherwise, and we're having to debate as students, having to debate who gets to stay in what dorm because there's black mold, instead of just fixing the black mold. But because there have been strategic efforts made to subjugate my people financially, economically, and always socially, I knew that there had to be more. You couldn't just legislate your way out of racism, legislate your way out of bias, legislate your way out of systemic uh, warfare. And from there, I turned towards finance. And in finance, I found a very rewarding and fulfilling career in corporate finance, working for a few venture capital and private equity funds, before going on to start what 40 Acres eventually became. And it just all correlated. The political science experience that I got while learning from Tobe Johnson, the same person that walked side by side with Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, and was one of the first members of SNCC, was also contributed to the work that I did in finance and being able to understand the psychology behind finance, which is a far bigger part of what we like to attribute to finance. But then it all came full circle when I was able to tap back into the initial experience that I had with technology. So I was trading Bitcoin, at a as soon as I could. And this was around 2017 when I was trading it. But um, from there, just staying up to date and having to learn what due diligence looks like, and then practicing that with the bucket of assets that I had already been accruing, had just turned into this deep love for what cryptocurrency was able to offer our people through smart contract technology. And then going a step further and leaning into the entire Web3 ecosystem that comprises of the next iteration of technology with virtual reality, artificial intelligence, and machine learning. It just was a culmination of tools that I identified as optimal and adequate. So before it was a 40 acres DAO, I was already looking at ways to, and I hope we get to the chance for like some book suggestions, but I was just knee deep in learning about the nonprofit industrial complex, and not just through a literature standpoint, but through being a nonprofit operator myself and seeing that, okay, well, I need a grant or funding to do the work. The people with funding to give grants don't give funding to people who haven't got grants.
Mhm.
You don't get grants. So it was just like this perpetual cycle of like, okay, well, you got to lean on this select group of folks that are willing to take a bet on you. And then once you follow the money and how these power structures are kind of inlaid within one another, it was just very disparaging to me. So I opted to try and change the governance structure for my nonprofit to be more. Oh, these big ass wasps. I don't know if you see this nest right here, but I'm just out here
I
going
cannot.
crazy.
I
But
cannot see the net.
yeah. Back to what I was saying.
Hmm.
That was a week before I met Russ. So
I got.
then I took that trip to Austin with the second in charge for my nonprofit to advocate for the exoneration of a man who's currently wrongly convicted out of Bell County. His
Mm.
name is Marvin Guy. Um,
Who's Marvin Guy?
Marvin Guy is a black man that was almost a Breonna Taylor.
Mm.
And in the state of Texas, where we are known for many things, he defended his house and he killed a police officer in self-defense.
Mm.
It was a no-knock warrant, and it was the wrong house, and he is being held without bail on death row.
Wow. I got that.
So
And what
he
was? Oh, and so.
he maintains his innocence,
Mm.
and every year, uh, we do two things. We go to the jail to, praise him and sing happy birthday, but we also uh, take trips to the governor's mansion.
Mm.
And I'm not from Austin. I know you mentioned that before the show. I just wanted to confirm I am from Dallas.
Oh.
But, those trips back and forth are, it's 2.5 hours,
Mm.
3 hours. So it's a very doable day trip, weekend trip. And oftentimes during the legislative session, we'll go down to the Capitol to meet with our senators and House of Representatives members. But also, if need be for direct action, to say protest outside of the governor's house, we will. So that's what we did. And after the rally, um, my friend was like, "Hey, I want to introduce you to somebody who's also been talking about this Dow stuff." And from there, that's how Russ and I met.
Hmm. I got that. And I guess something I'm interested to hear you speak a bit more about before you continue on is like, so what was the name of your nonprofit? And as you're looking at like that nonprofit industrial complex beyond like the inaccessibility of grants, like what were some other like major observations that you had? I'm not as familiar with the nonprofit system, and so if you have experience and knowledge around that, I'd love for you to share that as well.
Yes. So the nonprofit that I started and currently serve as the president of is the Community Growth Project. It is a nonprofit project that we collaborate with oftentimes when it comes to Uhuru Force, which is our social impact initiatives through 40 Acres.
Mhm.
And we focus on direct service and resource aggregation for housing sensitive individuals. And we also have a arm dedicated towards legislative policy and advocacy. In addition to that, we also have programs that are focused on reducing the recidivism rate among target area codes among North Texas, um, predominantly Tarrant County and Dallas County, where we focus on young boys and girls and focusing on how we could keep them out of the juvenile justice system and how we could prepare them for a life and expand their trajectory to be able to be upstanding members of society. So yeah, that's just a bit about the nonprofit work. But some of the issues that I've encountered and faced head on largely tie to perpetuating cycles and just how harmful that is for the people that we say that we intend to serve as nonprofit operators, as private and public foundations, charities, 501c3s, fours, you know, the whole gamut. There has to be deep and intentional reform to get us to genuinely look at the work that we're doing, valid, and this is why I don't very often tip my hat to some of the climate change guys and girls, but MRV as a tool for things like impact reports are just extremely valuable, because if we were to do an audit of some of these foundations and then some of the grants that they give to some of these nonprofits that they've been getting for dozens of years and decades, and you look in the situations of the society have only gotten worse, I
Yeah.
think that we need to scrutinize those things. But we are so comfortable with the status quo because it allows us this feeling of comfortability to where we don't focus on substantive change that does nothing but perpetuates harm against those that we say that we care about. And this is witnessed through private foundations, um, and their decision making for their grants. This is through some of the tax language that is very beneficial for certain people to just idly skate by and say they're doing things for social good. And then I think this, at the end of the day, boils down to some of the issues that capitalism has raised for our people. Um, it has infected the nonprofit industry. It has corrupted the soul of the work, and the only people not benefiting from that are the good guys, the people that are willing to say, for example, I don't want to take $100,000 from Shell for quadratic funding, knowing that's 1/1000th of what they make. That's
Hmm.
things like people saying, "Wow, these grant opportunities are very restrictive. Let me not fold on my morals and hand over a board seat or two to somebody who's not a member of my community, even if that means that I'll forego, say, 5 to 50 to $150,000." So things like that are definitely challenging, and I think that we have to fight with our entire might to overcome the scourge of what it really looks and feels like to say and mean that you're about the work, because a lot of people say that they are, and a lot of people have no more than a mouthpiece and the gift of gab. And I think that we need to lean deeper into the truly substantive work being done and highlight those individuals in a way that would be just as sustainable as, say, a Red Cross donation that's been going around for 50 years and that has perpetuated nothing more than the 8 houses that were built during the hurricane in Haiti by Red Cross. And they have billions at their disposal.
Yeah.
But the actual grassroots initiatives and mutual aid collectives in Haiti are oftentimes viewed as gangsters and thugs. That's why we're sending 1,500 American and Canadian troops to what, go give them malaria again or something.
Hmm.
So that's why I think that we need to fight back with some fervor, and I think that's why there's a push towards things like bringing your nonprofits on chain and ditching, the traditional system, because you look at what the traditional system has rendered for you
I
and
got
ask
that.
yourself, are you satisfied?
Mm. And we're not satisfied. And what I'm hearing you say to some extent is that a lot of the benefit is like the transparency that comes with being on chain, like you're talking about, like these legacy institutions that have had, large sums of money at their disposal year after year, because of where money has been allocated and continues to get allocated, because like you're saying,
Right.
there's not enough scrutiny. It sounds like bringing those institutions on chain would allow for people to actually see what's working, what's not working, and where the money's ending up, despite like X amount of money is being allocated to philanthropy and to social impact. Why are these situations not changing in a meaningful and substantive way, as you say? I think that makes a lot of sense, and I'm curious to hear like what you and Russ and EGX and others in the community have in mind for like what does the future of 40 Acres look like? And I know you were saying you just like in your story around 40 Acres, you were just talking about how you met him. And so yeah, how did your first conversation go meeting in the library?
Right. So, our first conversation was, I really feel divine because at that time, to take up space and be wholly black in the world of Web3 was and still is frowned upon. You have outliers, like very early on, there was the Lady Phoenixes of the world. There were the Sursus. There were the McIvers. There were a few more, but there weren't, it wasn't half as many of them as it was Eric Spivaks
Hmm.
or Matt Medveds, so or Koopa Troopas.
Yeah.
So for us to not only enter on our own, but look to our left and right and see brothers and sisters at stride, that was invigorating. That was the confirmation and reassurance that we knew that we needed to persist. Because, as Kendrick Lamar said, all my life I had to fight. Every Twitter space, every awkward conversation at a convention, every, side glance, because we're one of 3 out of 100 in a room that
Hmm.
look like us. If that is
Yeah.
a fight, but it's a worthy fight. So the conversation with Russ was, hell, how do we fight together? Are we enemies? Do we need to be fighting each other first to make sure it ain't no like clone?
Hmm.
I hope you watched that Clone Tyrone.
I haven't watched Nickel and Tyrone. I
You're
won't lie.
tripping. Go ahead, yeah, do that today, man.
Okay, tonight it's a vibe. Heard it.
But so we after we got past that and actually recognized like, damn, we both in this together. Let's do that. Let's lock in. Then came, how do we cast vision for what we know to be true and attainable for our people? So it all literally started with a scenic view from the 6th floor to Austin Library and a whiteboard and some markers. And we charted out from there the guilds that we wanted to prioritize. We charted out from there what it means to move and be 40 like. And we charted out from there how we were going to take the vibes worldwide and what that looks like now 2 years later this month is what you see today.
Hmm.
The 40 acres that's led 5 consecutive Gitcoin grants rounds, the 40 acres that is the imprint of what black culture is in Web3, the 40 acres that you know not to miss an event from, and so much more. But most importantly, the 40 acres that is ran by and upheld by its community of vibrant people all across the diaspora, from Lagos to South Africa to Paris to London, right back here to Dallas. We have developed a pipeline across the globe that connects our people and builds bridges where those bridges were once burned. So, let me get to your question.
Well,
What's
one.
next is we are going to be expanding our guilds and the programs that they offer. Currently, we operate 3 unique guilds. Renaissance on Chain is a collective of artists across different mediums of art ranging from visual artists to graphic designers and 3D printers to recording artists to dancers. We have all types of artists in Renaissance on Chain. Membership, last time I checked it, was around 57 members. And then we have Scribe Gang, which focuses on archiving the culture and being what my friend Quinn had taught to me as a practice of ethnography, which is basically where you translate the culture from the past to the present, identify similarities, and what we do with that is find unique intricacies. I believe my friend Ibrahim calls it the tapestry, in which we could find and align on a single thread to pull on that will give us the knowledge that we need to propel any one of our programs. And then lastly, you have Uhuru Force. Uhuru is Swahili for freedom, and it represents our undying will to fight and to change our circumstances and to not be a victim of what we know as our current state, not to lay down and die as it relates to the settler colonialism that we are still fighting against, but not physically in a sense as much as I stand with my brothers and sister in Niger, Mali, and Burkina Faso, but more psychologically here in America, where we have been indoctrinated to believe that we are worth less, worth nothing, because we were literally brought up in government projects that bore no fruit and rendered nothing but poisonous as the guns and the drugs that were smuggled into our community. So, what Uhuru Force does is we are the fighting force of justice. And what that looks like is a deeply intentional effort to connect with our communities, to build in a substantive manner that centers the people and their needs, most importantly. What that looks like is, of the three programs we run, I think I got time to give you all three of them in a brief description. So with our
Yeah,
first
please.
program, it is our literacy hubs, with LIT standing for Learning with Innovative Technology, where we're building free bookshelves and providing community resources free of charge for people to be able to increase their literacy rates among youth, and then provide career development opportunities for young adults and for early professionals to be able to learn things like how to code, how to market, how to be a product manager, how to be a program manager. And then that's in addition to connecting people with the other community efforts that are physically on the ground where they're at. So we have seven sites that we have planned, and with the one site that we do have in operations, what that looks like is a continual running resource list that will connect people with everything from food to clothing and housing, as well as how they could partner with more hands-on training. And this is going to be especially useful in areas in which we don't have as big of a presence in as we currently do, with the one literacy hub that we do have in operation. And what that looks like is galvanizing and building a community around this shared free resource of public good. And then from there, developing that community to go out and spawn new communities and spark new forms and ways of thought that built this collective conscience that started from subsidized education. Secondly, we have our Freedom Fund, um, which is a blockchain based bail fund that we operate as a network of bail funds to support liberation efforts across the United States where possible. We are in the process of taking this global, though. As we know, political prisoners aren't just relegated to America. We do know that America is the predominant uh, carceral state of the world, but we do want to support our brothers and sisters across the diaspora where they are unjustly being held. And what that really looks like, the reason why we decided to start it and what inspires us to continue to expand, is the fact that most people, if you believe in the American Constitution in any way, shape, or form, you believe that you are innocent until proven guilty. However, there's a caveat in America and where you aren't proven guilty, but you don't afford this price tag that we're going to put on your freedom. So you're just going to have to sit in jail anyways with the people that are actually guilty. And we'll get to you when we get to you. Mind you, it's a 5-year court backlog in my county right now, not to mention in places like Los Angeles, in places like New York, in places all across America. So there are literally and this year, I believe, is on track for a record of the number of pretrial deaths that are happening for people in county jails. I believe in Houston this year, there's been 28 deaths in their county jail. And I believe a overwhelming proportion of those have been from people that have been incarcerated for pretrial detention, meaning they are not guilty. They may have not even spoke to a judge seriously enough about their case to go through with trial proceedings. They just do not have enough money to go back home and go to work so they could pay whatever. So there's this war against poverty while there's simultaneously an erasure of the middle class, while there's simultaneously pricing pressures that are only um, fueled by corporate greed. So it's a snowballing effect of ruining our people happening in real time. So that was the motivation behind the centralized bail fund. And then lastly, we have the WAGMI Water Project, which is an effort to ensure that water is going to make it everywhere that it needs to. Water insecurity kills, point blank, period. And what we see happening, not just in Niger, not just in places like Sudan, but in places like 30 minutes away from me in Sand Branch, Texas, a freedman's town. I wonder why their water is poisoned. Places like Jackson, Mississippi, 86% black, predominantly black, and the water infrastructure is shot. And then pull a layer back, the contracts for the public utilities to service the water are exorbitant, extortionate even. You go to places like Flint, which goes without even saying. And then finally, we could bring it back to my hometown in East Carroll Parish, Louisiana, where you have to boil your water just to use it. But that doesn't get the recognition that it deserves. Meanwhile, ecological racism kills. You have cancer spores that are directly attributed to many of the places that I just named. Only other thing that is a comparison is the how these towns are predominantly black. So what we set out to do is to take a two-pronged approach. And this is where a partnership with direct service organizations like the Community Growth Project dive deeper into more sustainable solutions. Because not only do we have a dedicated fund to provide water at a moment's notice to water insecure areas across the states, we also are actively recruiting college students and early professionals that are passionate about environmental science and justice and want to research ways in which technology can push forward water infrastructure across the world. So not only are we servicing people's immediate needs, we're also looking to develop systemic and sustainable solutions because I've always been a fervent believer of systemic issues calls for systemic solutions, and those take systemic efforts.
Absolutely. It
So
takes it.
that's Uhuru Force. And then with Scribe Gang, and I know I owe you one of the editions, but we have our newsletter. And then we also have scribes that take our resource database and build reports based off of what they research for a bounty in our community. So effectively getting paid to write about topics that they're interested in, and we provide them with the resources to dive deeper into. And this is to help our Scribe Gang members develop their writing chops enough to where they feel comfortable to become editors at blockchain-based publications or other publications, to lead our newsletter efforts, to start newsletters of their own. And we've seen much success from that, because I really believe that in our newsletters, as well as our reports, we're able to really capture the essence of our culture, as well as whatever technical material is being addressed. And then from there, with Renaissance on Chain, is one of my is becoming my favorite guild, is where all of our artists are housed. So there we have live exhibitions, we have curated galleries, and we also have commission work that we do with our artists as well. So most recently, during this last South by Southwest, we actually recorded an entire album called Product of Our Environment, where we featured some of your blockchain faves, such as K. Lou and Quinn, UGX. And I even was able to be fortunate enough to contribute to the album as well. But then that also looks like some of the galleries that we've created in Spatial, and events that we've hosted for collectors, and unique collections that we've curated, such as highlighting hip hop culture, such as highlighting Afrofuturism and Black joy in a world that is filled with Black pain. So Renaissance on Chain is one of my favorite guilds, because to me, I believe that predominantly where I am right now in Dallas is in the midst of a cultural renaissance. But I believe that the world, in a broader sense, is in between a renaissance and a revolution, which I believe makes for the most beautiful type of art. So I'm really looking to see how we could leverage, say, Uhuru Force and Renaissance on Chain to make art for impact, and what that looks like. Shout out to Niger Flood A. Whenever the torrential floods um, impacted over, I believe, 3.6 million Nigerians, what did we do? We partnered with Nigerian artists to help get their work sold, showcase it to collectors, and coordinate relief efforts. And that was the work that was done by Uhuru Force and Renaissance on Chain. So those are how our guilds look. But moving forward, I just can't wait till we get a dedicated team of, say, developers to help us build more custom made applications that, say, there's certain DAO tooling and infrastructure that we want to experiment with and don't want to go towards a outsourced type model for sensitive information and intricate technology. So to be able to develop those teams internally is a goal of mine, as well as fashion. I believe this could look like a working group inside of Renaissance on Chain, or a guild in and of itself. But I believe that fashion is on the precipice of really pushing through to some revolutionary, being revolutionary again. Fashion as a revolution has really dictated uh, cultures. Like, can we talk about the work Dapper Dan did? Can we talk about what Andre Talley was doing? Can we talk about what we not even just Black fashion figures, but what their work looks like whenever it galvanizes a society, and how that grips a world? There was a time where since we them niggas, I'm gonna talk about it, when sagging was something that was looked at as distasteful to one sect group. But then to another secular group, sagging was a statement. It was a time where, hell, even denim and leather itself was a statement. So what does it look like in 2023? Because I know it's not them big ass mischief boots. That is not a revolutionary statement by any means.
You're funny.
But there may be some thread. Maybe it being how we source our materials. Instead of saying, like, I got this Pucci on, I got this Sergio Tacchini on, maybe saying, yeah, source from Africa. That's a revolution in and of itself. So I think fashion is on the precipice. I believe that computer development and software development is always going to be important. And then I would love to, and I don't know if this is me like shooting my shot or nothing, but I would just love to lock in with Sersu about gaming and esports. Because if you look at Black culture, and the Chris Moves of the world that are now the Kai Cenats, then you really see how we have really been at the forefront of this gaming culture. But to be able to capitalize off of it, that's a different game in and of itself. And to be able to do so in a decentralized fashion, whether that's through decentralized esports, or that's through um, participating through like legacy mediums, but doing it in an innovative fashion. I think that's something that I would like to explore the thread of.
Mm.
So those are three initiatives that I'm excited to see come into fruition and develop through the DAO. Um, but yeah, I can't speak for Russ or Ugo,
Mhm.
and I
Well,
wouldn't want to.
yeah, I got that, and I look forward to the day when we have all
Come
three of you gentlemen
on,
on here.
yeah, we
Uh,
might be able to do like a live podcast. That would be player.
that would be super fire. But my man Sirsu, you heard that? We'll definitely get you guys tapped in. He's in the We Them Niggas community. He's also based out here in Philly as well. I uh I
Yeah, yeah, y'all
I
Philly
drive
guys.
I drive Uber Eats a lot of the time, like to make money. And I was doing like Uber Eats one day. It's like maybe a Sunday, and lo and behold, I'm delivering food to this man. I'm like, "Who's this on my car?" I said, "This is Sirsu right here in the flesh." I said, "No way," but yeah, lo and behold, it was.
Yeah,
So the universe has us connected.
it
And
does.
I saw him again out at a Friends of Benefits Fest like 3 weeks ago.
Yeah,
My cabin mate Wendolyn, my friend, co-conspirator per se. We rented the car, and she rented the car, and she taken the car, and I was like there stuck, and a mere Mr. Sirsu, he gave me my ride back to
got to
my
lock
cabin.
in.
So
Okay, yeah,
he was my savior. So shout out to him, and shout out to, as you said earlier, him really being uh on the forefront of this space, really being an early Black contributor to the space. I think that is worth acknowledging, like you said. And I think it's amazing hearing about all the initiatives that you've been working on with 40 Acres, the 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 bail fund, hearing about this. I don't know, water insecurity was such an issue that you're so passionate about, but it very clearly is. I think that's super powerful. I know water insecurity is actually an issue that is on track to only get worse in the world. So I think it's
yeah,
super forward thinking to be proactively thinking about how do you build the future of that infrastructure. I think the future of infrastructure is always, how you put the world in the palm of your hand, how you end up with the rest of the world
exactly.
in a vice grip. So I think blockchain technology is infrastructure, but it's amazing to hear you thinking about like climate sensitive infrastructure as a Black person, but also just like as a young man. I think that's phenomenal, and I'm right there with you, and I'm excited to be able to see and learn more about that and how that initiative is going. I'm curious to hear you talk about public goods. I'm really interested in your opinion around like the public goods space. I also heard you mention earlier in the interview the shell contribution to Gitcoin. That you didn't mention Gitcoin specifically, I don't think. I'm curious to hear, yeah, about what is your take on the emerging world of decentralized public goods. Public goods, like as you said before, just being like resources that are intended to be for the community and financed by the community. Frequently, like you think of like public transportation, you think of like public parks, public education. These are like public healthcare institutions, systems. These are things that ideally are designed to preserve and work to support the interests and needs of the public, and ideally are also financed by taxation of the public. But in many instances here in the U.S. and around the world, we see those systems really not being designed to actually accomplish those things. Like as you mentioned, the water deals in Michigan. I'm not sure. No, I don't think it was from Michigan. It was somewhere else. You said that the deals or like what they were paying essentially was almost exploitative. Use a different word though. But I'm really interested. You know what I'm referring to?
Man, I think that it was Jackson that I was talking about, and
Oh yes,
as it relates to public goods, that was really my deep intro into, how people say like there's crypto and then there's Web3. That was
yeah.
my deep intro into Web3, was
Mm.
through public goods, because at that point I had been investing in Bitcoin since high school. I was now 21, and to hear some of these folks talking about public goods and funding communities in need, yes,
Was that surprising to you?
yes,
I guess so.
it was a pleasant surprise. I'm like, okay, cool. It's like when your enemy switches sides and, wants to play nice, do you take the bait? You do.
You do?
Especially if it's 500,000 and you're resource starved, am I right?
Absolutely.
So I think that was like my first intro to public goods from a Web3 standpoint was whenever we applied for Gitcoin because we found out about quadratic funding, and I had to explain why onboarding black people was a public good. And I was just flabbergasted because, mind you, we founded 40 Acres on the emphasis that the only way forward is together. So I thought that was like a universally understood principle. And to now see companies like Bankless positioning themselves as public goods, and then companies like Shell saying that they support climate change when they're in fact the number one climate polluter,
Mm-hmm.
it just, I'm gonna say it again. If your enemy turns into your friend, sounds like it, like they're turning into your friend,
Mm-hmm.
reaches their hand out to shake your hand, do you take the bait or do you look behind their back and make sure it's not a knife in the other hand?
Mm. I thought you got to do that due diligence, but I think, like you said, it's easy not to,
Exactly.
especially when
Because
you
when
already feel
when you're
vulnerable.
in the midst of a crypto winter
Mm-hmm.
and the tokens that you swear to God were gonna moon are down 27%,
Mm-hmm.
and not only did you invest in the token, but you got your entire community to invest in the token, and now people are like, well, shit, what are we to do?
Yeah.
You'll become desperate. And I believe that desperation has driven us to make a lot of decisions in this crypto ecosystem that really emerged from us not fully decolonizing ourselves from the systems that we were opting into that got us to this point in the first place.
Mm.
Which is why if I ever try to have these conversations with people, I try to have it from a very pragmatic point of view of this is where we are, this is where we came from, this is where I or you say that we need to go. What's standing in front of that? Once we start to dig deeper and we start to see that we're far closer aligned to our ops than we are to the true people that are intended for the community benefit. And this is what just gives me PTSD because these are the same issues that I faced in the nonprofit industrial complex. So we've essentially recreated it by hyper financialization and commodifying everything. I don't think we need another tree turned into a NFT that you could then stake for yield. I think that we need to go to those communities where those trees lay and invest in the local infrastructure to to accommodate and adapt to a changing environment and to preserve as much of that as possible. Because there was just a report put out yesterday that said that we're on track in the next 30 to 60 years to have no carbon left.
Mm. On the planet.
So instead of doubly counting and greenwashing, why not focus on impacting those most connected to the issues? And I am sorry to be the bearer of bad news, but a crypto bro that is trying to make tax eligible deductions should not be the arbiter of how a community in Central Africa governs their local habitat. Should he fund it to offset that tax burden? Of course. Put it in my pocket. I am a firm believer in that.
Mm-hmm.
But should he have a governance say?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely not.
For what? Are we not just perpetuating systems of financial hegemonies? But using the technology that was built to disrupt that?
Mm-hmm.
So we're only reinforcing it. Instead of saying that we have reached mass adoption in Web3, I believe that capitalism is actually on track to get its next software update before we do.
Mm-hmm.
Because if now we're leaning towards more of a surveillance state, good thing we got the technology to fight back against that. Oh wait, your number one broker is out here inking deals with the Office of Homeland Security. What financial surveillance did you think you was going to get away from?
I'm talking about
We
Coinbase.
have the tools to, yeah, we have the tools to now empower communities to self-determination when for centuries career politicians have just, oh my God, you should look at what county commissioners do to counties across America, how they manipulate budgets, because the best defense that we have from corruption is saying in this 30-mile radius of 8 counties, you can't do business with this budget that the government gives you in this 4-mile radius. You could do it in the other 26, and the other 5 or 6 commissioners get to do business in every county but theirs, but you just can't do business in your own area of the county, which has led to the political stagnation that keeps mayors in office for 30 plus years. But you've been having lead poisoning in your water for 20.
Mm-hmm.
So why are we not leveraging our technology to empower and embolden the most marginalized groups of people? Why are we using it to say that we're advocating for public goods, but in turn perpetuate the same systems that we say that we want to fight against? And that's where the earlier effort of which I talked about, the technology is cool, but the social constructs that we must decolonize our mindsets from, the institutions that we opt into, we must break away from or reform. Mind you, the work to reform is harder than to break it. So we're
Absolutely.
asking people to do a mix of both
Mm-hmm.
for the sake of crypto, for the sake of Web3, and the same group, you named them, I didn't name them, the same group that is inking deals with the Department of Homeland Security and $1 million deals with ICE is the same group saying stand with crypto. That's how far away we've strayed from the ethos of what it means to truly have sovereignty, to have self-determination. And there's a part of our soul that is dying every moment we continue to opt into these systems that go against what we know to be good for the people at large. There's a quote that is in the Atlanta Center for Civil and Human Rights that said, at first they came for the accountants, but I wasn't an accountant. And then they came for the cobblers, but I didn't make shoes. And then they came for me, and there was nobody left to speak. So I think that it's very important that we stand for crypto and stand against the oppressive forces that have tried to masquerade themselves as our allies in the final hour. We see it happening all across the globe and across multiple disciplines. This isn't a geopolitical podcast, but very briefly, if you
Yes,
see
it is.
things
Why
like,
not?
I guess it's everything, because everything is everything. If you see what happens in, say, Ukraine and Russia, as it relates to what is happening in Niger and with ECOWAS, which is controlled by AFRICOM, which is controlled by America, which is controlled by other external forces, you start to see there's a lot of subversion going on and manufactured consent and making people think they have control that they really don't.
Mm.
And my plea to the world is, when will we realize our true control? And when will we stand as one to demand what we're owed? That's how I feel about public goods. I think that we just need a detox. And a detox is one of those detoxes where it don't always taste good. It ain't always soothing for the stomach, but you're sick and you want to feel better. That is the key. You want to feel better. I'm not saying we take placebos
Mm-hmm.
and die a blissfully ignorant death. I'm saying let's do the hard work of healing our communities.
Mm.
And let's do that with blockchain technology. And that is why the only way forward is together came about.
Beautiful. Amen to that. I wasn't really. I feel like you have a far broader understanding of like the politics around crypto. I feel like the politics around crypto really haven't been my focus. Something that I've been had that I made space to really consume and familiarize myself with more. Like I've really become familiar with some of the different Black and people of color and marginalized group oriented social communities in this space, as well as like the the communities and protocols emerging around like music and media more specifically in the Web3 space. And so it's really um, not just fascinating, but uh, valuable, I think, to have you share about those things specifically, because I don't want my audience to learn about crypto and only learn about like the good things and not really have a critical perspective of who's operating here and who is making an effort to greenwash. In this case, Shell, it sounds like, or who is making a play for the favor of the larger Web3 community and like the people that are focused on social impact. And when I say that, I do, I guess to some extent, like speak about Coinbase. I know right now they have like their build on base summer, like they're making their L2, and trying to get more people to participate in that ecosystem and really be like it seems like a fishnet to some extent for people, because once you end up somewhere, there is like a friction to get out of things. The same way, I have my iPhone and my Mac. I'm not just gonna go switch over to the Google Chromebook just because it's nice and new. Like there's almost 0% chance I'm gonna do that, especially when I'm happy with what I have. And so I think with Coinbase already having an ecosystem that people are to some extent satisfied with, despite it being a centralized exchange, I think it's really important to also make sure people have a critical understanding of how this institution which is a major player, and even like the what people say on the forefront of the politics of this issue as an institution, like they are the ones making the U.S. Make choices, them aside like Goldman Sachs, I guess applying or whatever word you use for this Bitcoin ETF. Like these are like the major institutions that are impacting the politics. And while that might be exciting for people who are here and concerned for social impact, in fact altruistically, those people are also anxious because like are they participating in things that they will then get like not just scrutinized for, but get political and like legal repercussions for. And so I think it's easy to see what might be a Trojan horse as like really a very altruistic move when in fact that's not the case. Um, and I don't really know like what my final take is, but I definitely appreciate you coming on here and providing your perspective, and helping us keep not just an open mind, but uh, a multifaceted perspective on the institutions and actions taken in this space, because it's not all what people make it out to be. That's really what narrative construction is about. It's about being able to say this is what we're here for and this is what we're doing, but not really without communicating what necessarily other agenda you might have that's at play that you're not publicizing to the same degree. So I appreciate you saying all that, and I am excited by the world of public goods, and thinking about how can this be how can crypto and price go up be a facilitator of like life get better, and not just like for me or for you, but for people at large out in society. How can the same way that the US dollar gets devalued every year, how can people's quality of life get better every year? How can we get closer to effectively coordinating to make the world a safer place, a more like communal place? And how can we support people in facilitating collective action that actually moves the needle on climate change in a practical way, or gives people security in the face of what are real and persisting crises around the world? So, yeah, I really appreciate you saying all that you did. And I guess my last real question about 40 Acres is, how can my audience, my community, start to get involved and contribute to what you guys are up to right now?
Most definitely, man. I appreciate you asking that question because I learned how important it is to ask for help, and it's something that I grapple with every day. Um, we are definitely looking for new members with varied skill sets, everything from administrative skills to deep technical expertise. We welcome it all, because there is a place for everybody at 40 Acres. So if you want to help contribute, we have a rolling list of bounties that are eligible to be claimed on Wonderverse. Shout out to Wonderverse, which is a POC led DAO tooling platform that we've been using for our contributor onboarding methods. We host a group of bounties that are perpetual, as well as in addition to specific like use case related bounties. So we do have things like, hey, if you want to moderate a Twitter space, if you want to moderate a channel in our Discord, if you want to share a resource, even that in and of itself is a bounty, because resource aggregation is important to us. Um, those are all very seamless, streamlined, and low barrier ways that you could get to contribute to the DAO, which you will get rewarded for. But then there's also the call out for people like fashion technologists, people like computer developers to help us bolster and begin those two uh, perspective guilds that we're looking at, in addition to a general call to contributors and anybody who sees themselves aligned with the work that we do and interested in learning more about our mission and how they could contribute towards something greater than themselves. So I will say our priorities lie predominantly within our three guilds, within maintaining and expanding upon our programming. But there are also things like outreach, marketing, uh, being community managers, even, in addition to things like being a scribe apprentice and documentation. Those things are desperately important as we want to keep a record and the tapestry going. So those are just a handful of ways in which you're able to very seamlessly, like without even talking to one of our um, like onboarding members about how to join, you could pick up a bounty and kind of signal your interest and say like, hey, I might be good at this. You might want to reach out to me, and we, if inclined, will reach out to you. Um, but then there's also the opportunity to like I said, join a guild, be a member of governance within a guild, work your way up through the DAO, become a steward.
Hmm,
So your first stop is tapping in and contributing in a way in which you see fit.
I love that. And where can people find you?
So you can find us on every social media platform at 40 ACRES DAO, 40 Acres DAO, on all social media. You can find us on Medium at 40acres.medium.com. And then yeah, I believe that that's pretty much our go-tos. If you see us on social media, you'll see like a link in our bio. From there, it'll once you click onto that, it'll drop down a list of everything from our current activations, which will probably be in our spotlight, down to our manifesto, which is in the why section, as well as other things like links to some of our artists' latest artwork,
Hmm,
and some resources that we find beneficial for the community at large. So definitely give us a follow. Check out the link, and if you rock with us beyond that, come talk to us in the Discord and see how you could tap into the 40 family.
absolutely. You guys heard that. Go check them out. Go get involved. The Discord is a beautiful place. Catalyst is in there hosting meal prep, hosting accountability opportunities for you to declare what you're up to week to week. He's hosting book clubs. So come get educated, come get elevated, and come participate. They are a phenomenal community. We are a phenomenal community, and I'm both proud to be a member and really glad that we got to connect out in Denver. I know I
Oh
was
yeah,
talking to Black people. That was my goal getting out there. I was like, I'm gonna go and talk to the Black people and figure out like
yeah.
what's what. I don't know anything about computers and how they work beyond like the concepts of blockchain. So I sat at some of those talks and I was completely lost. But being able to walk around the conference, connect with the Black people, and learn about 40 Acres DAO, Black history on chain, um, about even just about like the public goods ecosystem, going to Shelling Point, like things like those were really eye opening to me, and I was really appreciative. And people kept telling me I got to connect with Russ, I got to connect with UGX, I got to connect with Catalyst. I'm like, oh, okay, the 40 acres, like I got to find the 40 acres people. And I know I was getting ready to leave, and probably like the last day, and I was like, where's this man? I got to make sure I find the man in the bleachers, and so I did, and I made my way over to you two. And I'm really glad that I did. I think it's beautiful what you guys have been building a space for people. I think in any predominantly white space, it can be challenging to figure out how do we show up as authentically, but also with our concerns and priorities in mind, not just the priorities of what might be a dominant group in a space. And so I think it's beautiful that you guys create that space and give people the opportunity to come into crypto and not just think about like their corporate lives, professional lives, and what they might want to do in the world of technology, but also to think about like their personal and political lives in a meaningful way, and in a way that really allows for discourse about the technology as well as the politics and the personal and the identities. I think that's a beautiful thing to create in a space that is so easily focused on finance, money, and not people hearts and minds. So I think it's beautiful what you're doing, and I definitely acknowledge you for doing it. And I'm super honored to be a part of it, and I'm excited to continue to support 40 Acres and yourself, Russ and UGX, and everything you guys do really moving forward in any ways that I can. Um, yeah, so go tune in with them, and I want to say thank you to everybody else for coming and listening to the podcast today. I know Catalyst, he's a big reader, so I'm gonna give him an opportunity to share some reading recommendations with us, so that we can continue to educate and elevate. And so I invite you to do that right now, and then I'll close us out.
For sure, for sure. And I'm gonna do too because I want to highlight a few people while I give their recommendations.
Please.
This month is Black August, and it is also Black Business and Black Philanthropy Month.
Mm.
So if you thought that you was only going to give us the shortest month of the year and we'd be satisfied, you are just wrong. Because what we do during this month is we highlight our political prisoners as well as highlight the economic mobility and resilience that our community has displayed for eons, as well as the fact that Black people are the most philanthropic per capita, of any individual race, and what that looks like is our willingness to support and love one another. Because as Assata Shakur said, it is our duty to fight for our freedom. It is our duty to win. We must love and support one another, for we have nothing to lose but our chains. And to kick off my recommendations, I would like to start by highlighting the revolutionaries that inspired me to be a revolutionary in my own right. Two people with two books that I recommend for you, three people with three books that I recommend for you, is Huey P. Newton's Revolutionary Suicide. We read that during our December book club to learn what revolutionary suicide really means. And the TLDR is this shit ain't for play, it's for real. It's no easy life. You are volunteering for hardship because you are standing on the side of the marginalized, because you have a sense of alignment to advocate for a group that cannot advocate for itself, or you are a part of that group and you know that it needs a voice in order to transcend its current status. Secondly, we have George Jackson's Blood in My Eye. George Jackson, for those of you that don't know, is the father of Black August, founder of the Black Guerrilla family, member of the Soledad Brothers, and at, I believe, 18 was a minister in the Black Panther Party before being sentenced to 1 year to life over a $70 stick up and eventually being killed by San Quentin police. Blood in My Eye was the book that he published a month before his death. And it is the reason why we fight. And then lastly, I have Ready for Revolution by Stokely Carmichael, also known as Kwame Ture, which is an autobiography that he penned, and it details his life, his ascension through the ranks of an organizer, and the motivation behind what led him to becoming one of the most prominent voices of Pan-Africanism that our world has ever seen. I would be remiss if this was just some like revolutionary, like I'm not Fred Hampton. So I do want to provide some additional reading, which is um, Decolonizing Wealth by Edgar Villanueva. It's two parts to this. I say the first part is mandatory reading. The second part is if you find yourself working in a nonprofit currently, this is the perspective of a funder and what it looks like to, say, work for Coca-Cola or the Gates Foundation, and what it looks like to manage multi-million and even billion-dollar portfolios of nonprofit finances. It is required reading if you want to dig deeper than just thinking shit is sweet in a nonprofit world and all that happens is good work. This really takes off the makeup and shows you what really happens
Mm.
and how we can really coordinate amongst each other to fight back and build new and regenerative systems. Uh, and then lastly, I would recommend Surviving Lockdown by Two Peas in a Pod,
Mm.
formerly known as De Facto Books. De Facto Books is an organization that we partner with for our book club series to do book clubs in prisons across Texas.
Very dope.
And it is also a publishing company that um, in 2021 published this book called Surviving Lockdown, which is a book of poems written by uh, members of the carceral state currently serving life sentences that they wrote to help keep them sane during the COVID pandemic
Mm.
in Texas, where we don't have ACs in our prisons, where COVID outbreaks were being underreported, where prison violence and state sanctioned violence against prisoners is at an all-time high.
Mm.
So this is just as much of a revolutionary book as Blood in My Eye is in many ways.
Yeah.
but it's of a different tune and cadence to where you're able to see it in a more poetic and artistic format than George Jackson playing with people through his words, you know. So these are 4 or 5 books that I would recommend that you get a hold of and take advantage of.
I bet. And I'll throw some links to those books and
And
YouTube videos about these people as well in the description. So I appreciate you.
all of these books are discussed during the 40 Acres book club. So if you didn't know like where your jump off point where 40 Acres was and you want to read any of those books, come talk to us.
There it is. Come talk to the man. Thank you so much, Catalyst, for imparting an extraordinary amount of knowledge and perspective onto myself, my audience, my community, our community today. I think it's
Our
a
community. Yes.
yes, indeed. It's an honor, and once again, it's a privilege. But yeah, it's really just like it's such a blessing to have you doing the work that you're doing, to be educating yourself on things that you're educating yourself on, and also to be working to preserve and pass on that knowledge. Um, I think it is important, to keep a message alive, to keep our voices alive, to make sure that traditions are passed on, and that ideas and perspectives are passed on and preserved, so that we can continue and grow into more self-determining communities and individuals. So, yeah, thank you so much, and thank you everyone for coming and listening to another episode of We Them Niggas, a platform where I am trying to build to empower our community, to celebrate our community, to acknowledge. Um, and if you have things you want to talk about, feel free to hit me up on Instagram, on Twitter. Um, yeah, like I'm here to be a resource to the community, to people that are like-minded and value aligned. I don't care if you're Black or not. I don't care what your ethnic background is, where you exist in any spectrum. I'd love to have a conversation about how I can support you in what you're doing, and how we can build a mutually beneficial dynamic. Play positive sum games. That's what I'm here to do. I'm here to play infinite games and positive sum games, and have fun and make friends along the way. So yeah, let's be in touch. This is We Them Niggas. Go follow me on social media. Hit me up if you want to join our Discord. If you're an artist interested in entering the world of NFTs, hit me up, tune in. If you want to learn more about DAOs, definitely go check out my episode with Ashley Keynes. Appreciate you for listening. Rate the podcast, subscribe, and tune in for more. Thank you so much. And this is We Them Niggas. Peace, y'all. Much love. And booyah. That's what I like to say.
Oh yeah, for the people.
Indeed.